Creamer Media's Mining Weekly Online is talking to Thierry Verculon, the director of the International Crisis Group focusing on Central Africa. Thierry, can you give us an update on the situation in the Central African Republic?
Well, the Central African Republic is basically the new country for blood diamonds. After Liberia, Sierra Leone and Ivory Coast. Now the Central African Republic has been suspended from the Kimberley process since last year, when the crisis broke out in this country and the state collapsed completely. Right now, the UN has found evidence of illicit diamonds trading and of the involvement of armed groups in this trade. Actually, what is going on, there are two main armed groups in the Central African Republic right now. One is called the Seleka and the other one is called the Anti-Balaka. And both of them are involved in the trading of diamonds, mainly by providing security to local diamonds traders. The local diamonds traders have to pay those armed groups first to get access to the mining areas, and secondly to have security in the mining area that are basically not under state control. So according to the UN, the estimate is about $24 million of diamonds have been smuggled out of the country since the suspension of the Kimberley process last year.
And is anybody doing anything to stop this, because it could have a serious impact on the diamond business?
Yes, definitely. There's been already a shipment of diamonds has been confiscated by the Belgian authorities in May, because there was a very high suspicion that those diamonds were coming from Central African Republic via DRC and Dubai. So the Kimberley process authorities are very much aware of that. The chairperson of the Kimberley process has written to the UN Security Council in order to alert the neighboring countries that there is contraband going on. There is a contraband of diamonds going on. And what seems pretty obvious is that the trafficking networks that existed before the crisis are those who are now operating in time of the crisis. Since the chairperson of the Kimberley process wrote to the UN Security Council, not much action has been seen, and it seems that it's very important at this stage, if we want to avoid Central African Republic to go the same path as Liberia and Sierra Leone, to identify those trafficking networks and to monitor them and arrest the people who are involved in this kind of illicit business. It will be also very important that the UN peacekeeping mission that is busy deploying in Central African Republic at the moment help the transitional government to re-establish state authority over the mining areas.
And what do you think the chances are of identifying, naming and shaming these perpetrators?
Well, I think it's not that difficult, because the trafficking networks before the crisis are the same that are operating now. So the UN group of experts has already documented some cases of contraband. My organization, the International Crisis Group, has been working on those networks before the crisis. And there are other NGOs that are getting more and more interested in what's going on in Central African Republic. It's really a classical case now of blood diamonds, and we'll see if the UN Security Council is going to take the appropriate measures.
And who is being hurt in this war that has been funded by diamonds and people selling diamonds? Who's being hurt in the crossfire?
Well, of course, the main victims are the local communities, and especially the mining communities, because basically last year the business collapsed while the rebellion took over Bangui. Then it becomes very difficult for the local traders to operate, very difficult and dangerous to operate, and mining activity basically stopped in those areas. It has restarted progressively, under the control of armed groups, unfortunately. Now there is a resumption of artisanal mining activities. Unfortunately, those artisanal mining activities are benefiting to the anti-Balaka and the Seleka armed groups. But the first victims, of course, are the people in the mining areas. Of course, the transitional government in CAR doesn't get any more money from the diamond trade, which is now completely illicit in Central African Republic.
And what are the chances of the Central African Republic moving itself out of this failed state position and getting back into the world?
Well, it's of course a very difficult question to answer. There is now a UN mission that is busy deploying in the country. It's pretty obvious that in addition to the provision of security on the ground, there must be a political agreement between the stakeholders of this crisis to move forward and to organize the transition till election. At the moment, the problem is that the political dialogue in CAR is at a standstill. There is not much progress on this front, and the security, even in the capital, has deteriorated.
And when do the elections take place, or when are they due to take place?
Well, the elections were due to take place in February next year, and they have been postponed recently to August next year. Because of the security situation and because of the lack of political progress. August next year is still an optimistic deadline. There is no administration left in Central African Republic. The central government is very weak, and as I said, even in the capital, security is very volatile. So there's still a very long way to be able to organize election in this country, and the reestablishment of state services should be, of course, the first step.
And swinging now away from the Central African Republic to the Democratic Republic of Congo, could you give us any confirmation on the reports that we hear that the governor of Katanga is actually had a poison attempt on his life?
The governor of Katanga, who hasn't been seen in public for quite some time, has been poisoned. He already had been poisoned in the past. It's not the first time, and the rumor circulating is that he may be in an hospital overseas. This seems to follow the public stance that he recently took against the review of the constitution in the DRC. This constitutional review was planned in within the inner circles of the president of the DRC. The governor of Katanga made quite a surprising declaration when he said he was not in favor of a constitutional review, because he's part of the majority, of the presidential majority. So the fact that he distanced himself from this constitutional review initiative was very significant in Congolese politics. So there is a lot of nervousness in Katanga right now, because the governor of Katanga has been there for quite a long time, since the end of the transition, basically. He's been the interlocutor of all the mining companies operating in this province, and this is, of course, the main province for mining in the DRC. So you can understand the nervousness. In addition to this, the mining companies are still waiting for a review of the mining code. The government of the DRC made clear that he wanted to have a new mining code, and the plan was basically to do that in 2012 for the 10th anniversary of the mining code, that was passed in 2002. This process is at a standstill. Actually, it's very difficult to know if this is still on the government agenda or not. And as a result, the civil society organizations that were involved in a series of consultations about a new mining code have recently written to the government to try to get clarity. But there was a series of consultation organized with the private companies and with civil society organization and other stakeholders, and then everything became silent. Suddenly. So now for quite some time the government is very silent about the review of the mining code, and this is another factor of uncertainty for people operating in the DRC.
And the constitution and changes to the constitution, what actually is envisaged there, and what is the standpoint of the International Crisis Group on the change to the constitution?
Well, for the moment there is there's not much clarity about what a new constitution would look like. There is no draft circulating. It's just that several politicians related to the presidential majority have mentioned that. But it seems pretty clear for everybody in the DRC that this constitutional change will put an end to the provision in the constitution limiting presidential mandates to 2 terms, basically. And this is regarded as the main objective of this constitutional review. Now, of course, putting this limit in the constitution has been very important for the Congolese people, has been also very important for the international community, who don't want to see someone ruling the country for 20 or 30 years like Mobutu did, basically. And so this is what is at stake. The point of view of the International Crisis Group is that the Constitution, and especially this provision, should not be changed. Of course, it is possible to change the Constitution. There is legal ways to do that, and those legal ways must be respected, but the 2 terms limit should not be changed.
And what is the impact on investment by the mining community into Katanga in particular and the DRC currently as a result of all these shenanigans?
Yes, I think this political environment and those already controversial elections ahead of us in 2016 are creating a lot of uncertainty. As I said, the government is keeping silent on several issues, and as a result this may slow down investment. It's pretty clear that the companies operating in the DRC are getting cautious because they know that election time may equal to more financial pressure. The DRC governments need $800 million to organize elections. This is 10% of the national budget. So it needs a lot of money to organize those elections, and in addition to that, politicians need a lot of money for their campaign. That makes, of course, businesses very cautious.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly Online, talking to Thierry Verculon, the director of the International Crisis Group, which focuses on African affairs.